You have found us once again, YouTube, Twitch, wherever you're looking. It's the Slate MLB edition. I know a lot of people have football on their minds on the heels of week 1, week 2, just a couple days away, but there's a lot going on in the world of baseball. I'm Adam Kaufman, Steve Buchanan, Garion Thorne along with me. And boys, we do have a ton to cover on the diamond because as we know, there's the one game going on right now, the Indians and Twins. But tonight it's a big slate. Everybody's at it. We're inside the final 20 games of the regular season for everybody. And the Giants, Bukes, the Giants became the first team in baseball to clinch a playoff spot, just like we expected from the very beginning.
It's amazing, too, that they were the first team. And I put a tweet out the other day, last night, saying how, like, the progression of the months, like, they're not that good. They're not that good. And you just kept trying to convince yourself until they win and win ahead and were the first team to get to clinch. I think the first team to 90 wins too. Is that true, Gary?
Yeah.
That's also that's just absolutely amazing for a team who had such long shot odds because the NL West was expected to be taken over by the Dodgers, followed closely by the Padres. It just not went that way. It didn't go that way at all.
See, Gary, though, I was looking at our friends at the DK Sportsbook and the Giants. I feel like there's still at least some level, however big a level you can decide for yourselves, but some level of disrespect, because if you want to look at them, if you want to put some money down to win a championship, it's plus 1,100 for the Giants, which is 6th best in all of baseball, despite this being the best team for, as Buke said, months and months and months.
Yeah. And the thing about that number too is I think if you're looking to buy into that number, or maybe if you're a little afraid of that number still, so much of that line is still predicated in the idea that if the Dodgers win the wild card game, and again, San Francisco might still have to play in the wild card game. The NL West is far from wrapped up. But if the Dodgers, this behemoth, this shadow hanging over the rest of the league, has to play in a one-game wild card, if they win that, yes, they'll have to face the Giants, which means the Giants could be looking at an early exit in the playoffs, despite 105, 107 wins, whatever they end up with. But what if the Reds or what if the Cardinals just happen to win that game? And then suddenly the path for the Giants becomes so much easier. So, I mean, there's a lot of value in that bet, even if you are someone who maybe still isn't quite drinking the Kool-Aid on the San Francisco Giants.
We've got some of the odds in front of us. You can see them on your screen if you're watching along versus just listening to us in podcast form. And as I said, 6th best odds, Bukes, to win a championship, these Giants. In front of them, and these names are not going to surprise people, you've got the Dodgers, the Astros, the White Sox, the Brewers, the Rays. If you were inclined to put some money down, are you more apt to bet on one of those teams, or even just for the giggles of it, a team with even longer odds than any of the ones I mentioned?
Well, I mean, the Mariners are going to win the whole thing. So, I mean,
naturally,
your giggles right there. So you have to take that into consideration. Here's the thing about baseball. You just have to make a run at the right time. And you look at a team like Garion's Blue Jays, who I think a week and a half ago, and Garion can confirm or deny this, he was ready to just move on to football. Would you say that is true?
I believe they were 6.5 games out of the second wild card 2 weeks ago. So, yeah,
right.
Tensions were high.
So
First
now,
right
now they are the leader in the wild card game in that number 1 seed. It doesn't look like they're going to stop anytime soon. They absolutely stomped the Orioles a couple of days ago over the weekend, scored 44 runs in that series. That was more than 8 teams have scored in all of September at that time on Monday morning. Just absolutely incredible. And then they go out and they thrashed the Rays last night. The team is unstoppable. And if you took a chance on them a couple of weeks ago, you'd be feeling pretty nice right now. But those odds have obviously shifted. And that's just the beauty of baseball in these late runs in the month of September. We got about maybe 2.5 weeks left of the regular season, and the Blue Jays are completely did a 180 of where they were 2 weeks prior. So there's nothing wrong with taking some of these long shots. You probably have lost some value here on really anyone who legitimately can make it at this point. If I'm being quite honest, we're looking at the league winner right here. The Reds are making a little bit of a run right now. The Phillies aren't totally out of it. They could still win the division, although if they don't win the division, they're not getting in, period. So there is some fun in taking some of these long shots, but at this point in the stage, I think we kind of have an idea of who's making it and who's not. Can't say that can change, but at September 14th, you pretty much have a good idea.
between now and just before 6 Eastern. So for the next 40 minutes or so, we'll take you through obviously things that are going on in the slate, bets you want to consider, obviously daily fantasy. So by all means, load up with your questions, Twitter, YouTube, Twitch, wherever you're finding us. But just because we're talking about Garion's Jays and Garion, we'll get to you in a sec, but Bukes, you're the one that, contrary to popular belief, I do keep up with what you're writing on Twitter, despite what a certain t-shirt in your closet says. And you tweeted just a little while ago, earlier today, you're tempted. I don't know how tempted you are. You'd have to tell me really, but tempted to think about Vladimir Guerrero as the MVP in terms of actually putting some money down because, plus 1,400, 14-1 odds. As we know, he's not the overwhelming favorite. That is Shohei Ohtani. We've been talking about him and the Angels all season long, and he remains the overwhelming favorite. But given what Guerrero, how hot he's been throughout the year and especially lately and what he could achieve before the end of the season, how tempting is that bet?
Tempting enough that it has actually officially been placed. That I am now on the Vlad Guerrero MVP train at 14-1 odds. Honestly, if you really look at it and you really look at the whole grand scheme of things, what has Shohei Ohtani done from July 20th on to be deserving of the MVP? I'll let you know what it is. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. He had a phenomenal first half. He's the first successful two-way player since really Babe Ruth. But if you take those away, there's nothing to hold your hat on that Ohtani should be the MVP. Vlad Guerrero Jr. has single-handedly, I don't want to say single-handedly, is one of the biggest reasons why the Blue Jays are in the position that they are right now. This is somebody who is going to likely eclipse 50 home runs, that should get over 100, could knock on the door of 120 RBI. He's at 114 right now. I'm sorry, 103 right now. So could reach that 120 mark. He's likely going to win the Triple Crown if things stay this way. That is your MVP 9 times out of 10. Not even a shadow of a doubt. That is your MVP. At 14-1, there's way too much value right now because Ohtani is the overwhelming favorite. And I really hope that at the end of the day, when they go to vote for this award, they vote for this award because of what happened all year long, not because Ohtani is a successful two-way player, which he is. And that has to always be a consideration. But for what Vlad has done all season long, consistently, and then put this team back in the position that they are now to be not only in the playoffs, but in the top seed in the wild card, that's your MVP. That's the way it should be voted. I don't care if you're trying to, if you have Ohtani, here's what I would say. Mm-hmm. If you have Ohtani, I would hedge it with Vlad because the odds are too good at this point. If you are on Ohtani, dabble on Vlad. You really have nothing to lose here. For somebody that's playing, like I said, for somebody that's playing as well as he has, the numbers that he has, if I told you that X player was 14-1 to win the MVP with those numbers, you would jump on that all day.
Look, I'll say what I've been saying all season long, what I continue to believe, which is that I'm not going to say Shohei Ohtani is a better player than Babe Ruth. I'm not saying like put him in the Hall of Fame right now or something like that. But what he is doing, what he has done throughout this year is absolutely more impressive than what Babe Ruth ever did. And the reason is because Babe Ruth didn't do it at the same time. He did it in stages of his career. Ohtani doing it at an elite level at the same time is incredibly impressive. It's easy to understand why the MVP odds are what they are. But to some degree, Gary, and I guess I wonder this, does it come back to that, that age-old debate that we have all the time, especially in baseball? I feel like more in baseball than any other sport, which is it the most valuable player on the best team or one of the best teams, a playoff team, or is it the guy who you believe is the most valuable in general throughout the league? It goes back to the times that Mike Trout has won it, obviously. It goes back to, A-Rod with the Rangers. Does Shohei get a bigger advantage, disadvantage? How is it viewed with respect to the Angels going nowhere versus the Blue Jays potentially being a wild card team?
Oh, we've gotten to the let's talk about the Blue Jays for 10 minutes and not talk to Garion. We've reached the end of that segment. Okay, just want to make sure.
It
seemed about right. The producer was saying, okay, let's involve Garion in the show.
Yeah, I mean, what does he know about the Blue Jays? Okay. Look, I think at the end of the day, Ohtani is winning this award. I think Steve is right in the sense that these odds are insane given the circumstances. However, this is an insane MVP season. I mean, we've never seen someone do what Shohei Ohtani has done. And when you think about it, just the clean benchmarks, even someone like Ohtani, who also has a chance to hit 50 home runs, the way he's been hitting lately probably won't quite get to that mark, but we've seen him get hot many times this season. He's got a chance to hit 50 home runs and steal 25 bases before we even get into what he's accomplished as a pitcher. So I think we're past the old school narrative of you need to be on a winning team to win one of these major awards. It's gone by the wayside too many times in the recent past. And I'm for that. I don't think you should be punished just because your teammates are bad. Whether it's Felix Hernandez or Mike Trout or whoever, we've just seen it happen time and time again. The case for Guerrero, though, as Steve was laying out, is that the numbers might just be so dizzyingly amazing by the end of the season. And if the Jays have won something like, 27 of their last 32 games, there is going to be a push. And I think he won't be 14-1 if he keeps hitting like he's been hitting the next 3 weeks. So yes, hedge 1000%. If right now you are sitting on a Shohei Ohtani ticket, congratulations, but you've got to have a little bit of a weird feeling in your stomach right now. So I think the thing to think about with the Jays as well, they're facing the Rays right now. However, they have 7 games against the Minnesota Twins and 3 more games against the Baltimore Orioles coming up. Between those two 28-man rosters, there are -2 major league caliber pitchers. So again, these numbers could get stupid by the time October 3rd rolls around.
So, Garion, you need to do what Bukes does. While you're talking occasionally, well, in the case of him talking, you got to drop in the occasional, like, yeah, right. Like, just let us know you're still here.
Right.
That's all.
Sure.
Right.
No, I look, you guys, I just wanted to learn something about the Jays. I thought I would sit here quietly. Maybe it's some.
Well, hold on. Now, hold on 1 second, though. You can't say that, like, I haven't been a Jays guy. Like Robbie Ray, I was on that drum early,
Oh, it's true. I know.
He's out there moping in Philadelphia about it, for goodness sake.
Look,
in the empty stadium.
We're about to watch. You and I are going to have to do something when the AL wildcard game is Blue Jays hosting the Mariners in Toronto. You might have to get a passport and figure out how to get up here.
How dare the both of you?
Right. That would be something. I'd have to put Papa Shungo on the line for something. Right.
So just in general, and this, is the case right now, it'll probably be the case a week from now, but we'll see. Obviously, as we get closer to the finish of the regular season, some of these teams are going to fall off. But right now, as we sit here, apologies if I didn't name your team, folks. Rays, White Sox, Astros, Blue Jays, Yankees, Red Sox, Mariners, Athletics. That's the American League. Braves, Brewers, Giants, Dodgers, Reds, Padres, Cardinals, Phillies, Mets. That's 17 teams, guys, right now that are in contention for a playoff spot because of obviously this second wild card team that has, been around for a couple of years now. It makes for a lot of excitement. Is there a team, Bukes, maybe it's your Mariners, but if you can pry yourself away and pick somebody else, is there a team that you're particularly excited about, one that we should be really watching for among that group?
I mean, the Cardinals are an interesting late addition out of nowhere, like in typical Cardinals fashion. They went out and made some of the worst moves in trade deadline history to acquire J-Hap and John Lester, but it wasn't bad enough that it's completely knocked them out of contention. Like, if anything, they're very much in contention right now, and this kind of came out of the blue. Now, the problem is that, they have to, something has to happen with the Brewers for something to really happen here. But at least they're making some sort of run at this point here. I think it's safe to say the Brewers probably have this division wrapped up, but the NL wild card may not contain the San Diego Padres, may not contain the Cincinnati Reds with the way that those two teams have been playing. A couple of weeks ago, if you told me that the wild card was going to contain anything but an NL West teams at all, I'd say you're crazy. There's no chance. There's starting to be an opening now with the Padres. They just can't hit. That has to be one of the greatest collapses from preseason expectations to where we are now. That team was absolutely stacked from top to bottom. They had an all-star team plus, all-star plus, I would dare to say, with some of the moves that they made. They might not even make the wild card. which is allowing the door to open for teams like Philly, for teams like the Cardinals. But back to what I was talking about earlier, if you go on that run at the right time, and that's kind of what the Cardinals are doing right now, you might be able to sneak in. So if there's a team right now, it's obviously the Mariners, first and foremost, because they're only 3 out of the wild card. And they're beating up on the Red Sox, and that's just helping their cause, because that's who's in second. But if there's, or it might be the Yankees, if they keep flip-flopping, it doesn't matter.
They're
That's
tied,
just facts.
tied.
They're tied, whatever, losers. Regardless, at least from what the teams that are making a move right now, the Cardinals have to be one of those teams.
Garion, a non-Blue Jays team that interests you right now?
I mean, the odds aren't nearly as good now. However, I will toot my own horn here for a second.
Please.
At the All-Star break, I wrote an article up on the DK Playbook entitled 3 Major League Baseball Futures I Like for the remainder of the season.
Nice.
Bet 1 at plus money, the Rays to win the AL East. Bet 2 at plus money, the Blue Jays to make the playoffs. Bet 3 at 15-1, not as good now, but at 15-1 at that point in time, the Brewers to win the World Series. And I continue to only feel stronger and stronger about that particular team. We've just seen this model work time and time again. And maybe it doesn't always lead to a World Series title every single time, but it very rarely does not lead to success. I think the 2016 Cleveland team really comes to mind when I think about what the Brewers have put together right now. And that's 3 dominant starting pitchers, 2 unhittable arms in the back end of the bullpen.
Yeah.
And really, I mean, you would think they couldn't have added anything else to this equation, but recently Aaron Ashby, their top prospect, has come up and has started to be utilized in this like 3-4 innings swing role. Like maybe you'll start some days, maybe you'll pitch the 4th to the 7th a couple other days. He is devastatingly good. His stuff is off the charts. This is just a team that is blessed top to bottom with elite starting pitching. I mean, there are statistics that say the Brewers have 3 of the 5 best pitchers in baseball when it comes to starters. And then Josh Hader at the back end with Devin Williams and that changeup. So I just look at what this team can do. If they can score 4 runs a game, they're unbeatable. And I know Brandon Woodruff's a little banged up right now. I would assume that's more of like a Chicago White Sox scenario where we've basically just seen the White Sox give every single one of their starting pitchers a week off in the past little bit because they can. The NL Central, I believe the Brewers are 14 games up right now. So they're resting some arms. They're going to be able to set everything up the way they want to. They're going to be playing the terrible NL East division winner in the first round of the playoffs. It's going really well right now for the Brewers.
Guys, we've got 15 more games tonight. The Indians have beaten the Twins 3-1 in the afternoon game, first half of the doubleheader, so they'll play again a little bit later on. Looks like the only game that we have to even potentially consider weather is going to be the A's and Royals. That could be impacted by rain a little bit later on. Bukes, I know that's not something that concerns you, though, my friend, so we won't worry about that. Run and a half the line for every favorite tonight, which is, you know, the standard there on the DK Sportsbook. Obviously, get to some of the other nitty-gritty in terms of the odds. It changes things. Before we get into DFS, best bets, all that good stuff, and we're here with you for about another half hour, is there a game in particular, Bukes, that you're most intrigued by from a betting standpoint?
From a betting, I mean, there's actually a lot of good lines that are on tonight's slate, and I'm just pulling them up here right now. One of the ones that I am a little bit concerned about, though, is the Yankees as minus 365 favorites against the Orioles. It's a huge line. It's the biggest on the slate, and rightfully so. Like the Yankees should absolutely smash Alexander Wells and whatever you want to call the people that come out after him. That they call them relievers, but I think they need to have another name. With that said, do you trust Garrett Cole, who is coming off a hamstring injury, to go through this game? Like, would you feel comfortable as a 365 favorite if it's up to the Yankees bullpen? The only reason I bring this up is obviously hamstring issues can be extremely tricky. Carlos Carrasco is a perfect example of that. Missed the first 3 months of the season because of a hamstring injury. So, I'm not one that goes out of my way to take a 365 favorite. I can't say that my money is well put taking a 365 favorite because of the return, but I look at that line there, and obviously the majority of the bets and money is going to be on the Yankees. I don't like taking favorites that are that big, first of all, but second of all, that are coming off an injury, like something tricky, like a hamstring. Garrett Cole obviously seems to be okay. He tried to jump over the railing to fight the Mets. So obviously to me, that says that he was a coward and was getting lit up in his last start. So he boohooed and wanted to get out of there to, not ruin his Cy Young season, or he actually is okay. Either way, minus 365 is not something I'm interested in, despite them being overall massive favorites against a very weak Orioles team.
What about you, Garion? Plenty to choose from.
There's a lot of interest I have right now in this White Sox Angels game. I would say just immediately, White Sox team total is 4.5. I would say that they clear that number. I know Packy Naughton's looked okay so far in his 4 appearances, but his xFIP is far more indicative than his ERA right now. He just isn't a guy I would trust, especially being left-handed up against this very talented Chicago White Sox lineup, a lineup that gets Tim Anderson back tonight, a lineup that really, aside from Andrew Vaughn, is completely healthy right now and one of the more dangerous teams in all of baseball, particularly against southpaw pitchers. So I like that team total. It's funny. This morning, I was all over Lucas Giolito and his strikeout prop. However, that line was removed and then changed drastically. It opened at 7.5. It was plus money to the under. DraftKings Sportsbook was like, no, we're actually not so cool with that. So now it's 6.5 and minus 135 to take the under. But I would still be a little interested in that line just because is what I was talking about before, which is we've seen what the White Sox playbook is right now for their pitchers. It happened twice in this series this past weekend against the Red Sox. They had Carlos Rodon come out and throw 5 innings. After 86 pitches, he was done. And on Sunday, Lance Lynn came off the IL, threw 70 pitches over 5 innings, and was done. I think they're just being very cautious with their pitchers right now. I would not expect to see Lucas Giolito pitch into the 6th inning of this game. So it's going to be hard to get 7 strikeouts. I mean, he can do it. The Angels strike out a lot. He's a very good pitcher.
Yeah. But
I still just think longevity is not in the cards for Giolito tonight. And I will also say there is a DK odds boost, 3 home runs hit tonight by the Chicago White Sox. If you want to take the over on that one, it is plus 425. So I already said they're going to score at least 5 runs. That is a little bit intriguing if you want to get into some of the odds boosts.
We're halfway home here. MLB The Slate. Thanks for being with us. We appreciate you. Get any questions in that you have, and these guys get you set up for a busy night in Major League Baseball. So let's go to DFS. We can circle back to the DK Sportsbook, but let's take a look at the actual main DraftKings site. I know Bukes will bring it up here for us, and we can dive into some of the DFS plays tonight. Of course, the guy that Bukes mentioned before, Garrett Cole, he's the most expensive. He's at 10,700, coming off that hamstring injury, as Bukes mentioned, but clearly in a good spot. And shout out the Orioles last time he saw them over 7 innings. Some of what you could read, by the way, from Bukes on DK Nation earlier today when he was writing his MLB cheat sheet. But Garion, you wrote the best studs and value picks, an article there going position by position. I mean, anything anyone could possibly wonder when it comes to high price guys and, some of those sneaky plays they may not be thinking about that they could include in their lineup. So I'll start with you. You don't need to go position by position, but some of the value plays that really stood out to you tonight. Who do you like?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of value on a slate this size, obviously. I would say the 2 names that immediately jump out is 2 of my favorite dollar for dollar plays. We talked about the Giants right off the hop of this show. They are facing just the human flaming garbage can that is Jake Arrieta tonight. It is crazy that this man still has a job. He was released by the worst team in the National League. And then because the Padres are that desperate, was picked up and immediately started a game and gave up, I believe, 7 earned runs. So that's kind of where Jake Arrieta is right now. Across his last 6 starts, opponents have a 499 WOBA against him. I didn't even know that was possible. So thank you, Jake Arrieta, for opening up new horizons for me in terms of baseball. But the Giants, it's funny because they are such a great team and such a great offensive team. You wouldn't expect to be able to get such value at certain parts of their lineup, but they continue to hit Tommy La Stella leadoff. And I would assume with Jake Arrieta being a right-handed pitcher that Tommy La Stella at $2,900 will once again hit leadoff in this game. Is Tommy La Stella very good? No, I won't lie to you people. He's not. But if he gets 5 plate appearances in this game and 2 to 3 of them come against Jake Arrieta, you really have to look at this guy at sub $3,000. Speaking of the Cubs, one of my other favorite value plays, also a leadoff hitter, Rafael Ortega, who has been crushing right-handed pitching since he was given the opportunity in Chicago. He's $3,700 tonight, going up against a struggling Kyle Gibson, to say the least. Gibson has not looked good since being traded to Philadelphia. Across his past 7 starts, a 380 WOBA to opposing left-handed bats. Ortega is hitting 330 with a 148 WRC plus against right-handed pitching so far this season. Again, 5 plate appearances, really good hitter in a really good matchup for less than $4,000. That's an opportunity that I am definitely going to take advantage of.
Couple hits. You can see it on your screen, or could anyway. He tripled, scored a run last time out, 13 fantasy points. Bukes, what about you? Who do you like?
Yeah, so my favorite value play comes at first base tonight with Ryan Zimmerman going up against Jesus Luzardo, who has been struggling all season long, but particularly since he got traded over to the Marlins. You think being in the NL East, you'd have a lot of room to pitch in. Seemingly doesn't matter for Jesus Luzardo. So Zimmerman is a left-handed pitching hitting specialist. Like, that's all he does now. That is basically what his career is. Through 102 plate appearances against lefties so far this season, 379 WOBA, 289 isolated power, and a 136 WRC plus. To compare that to what he does against righties, it is a massive drop off. 279 WOBA, a 188 isolated power, and just a 71 WRC plus. He is going to get his at bats against Luzardo tonight. He's confirmed hitting 5th tonight. Obviously, you look at the last 10 games, only averaging 4 DraftKings fantasy points. Not great, but he comes in for a lot of pinch hits, doesn't get a hit because he's facing a righty. They send him back down. Lefties, that is where you want to get him. One of my favorite value plays on this slate, 2,900. Usually don't want to pay down at first base because there's a lot of bats you want to pay up for. You know, someone like Vlad Guerrero Jr., maybe the guy who's going to win the MVP, because now I bet him. So now it's definitely going to happen. But at a position where you can be different, which is definitely first base, I think Zimmerman is one of the best values on the slate tonight.
Our man Germ on Twitch wants to know, who would you pair with Touki Toussaint, DraftKings GPP? What do you think there, Garion?
I would first maybe question the use of Touki Toussaint. I'll say this. I understand what you're thinking. The Rockies away from Colorado, generally speaking, a good idea. However, Toussaint really hasn't been stretched out his last 3 starts. He has pitched a max of 3 innings in that span of time. It's possible he can get 5 in tonight, but if the recent trends are any indication, I have serious concerns about using Toussaint tonight. I just don't know how long he's going to last in that game. But if you're using a Touki Toussaint type, someone who's kind of in that price bucket, again, it's tough. Like, this is a weird slate, especially up top. I mean, we haven't really talked about the top of the pitching slate, but you've got Garrett Cole, who I think Steve really portrayed beautifully. There's risk here. There's risk in paying almost $11,000 for a guy who left his last start with a hamstring issue. Hamstring issues don't just magically go away in a week. So
unless you were faking them.
That's true. Unless you were faking them because Alejandro Kirk scared you, which I understand. He's a scary man. Lucas Giolito. I've already talked about Lucas Giolito. I think Giolito could throw 5 perfect innings with 45 pitches and still be removed from this game before the 6th inning. That's just set in stone. That is what I believe tonight with how the White Sox want to use this guy. And then Frankie Montos, who I actually really like in a vacuum, but that's the one game with weather concerns. So if you're really going to be paying attention, I would say Montos is my favorite starter on this slate. You go back across his last 11 starts, 2.18 ERA, 2.35 FIP, a 32% strikeout rate. The Royals cannot hit. This is all very good. But again, you have to pay attention to the weather concerns there. So that would be my stud number 1 guy to pair with a cheaper number 2 pitching option.
You view that any differently?
So one guy that Garion didn't bring up, and he's actually one of my favorites on the slate, is Nathan Eovaldi going against the Seattle Mariners. Now, the scenario, how this needs to play out is that Eovaldi goes 7 strong innings, maybe a no-hitter, strikes out 10, then the Boston bullpen comes in, the Mariners score like 9 runs and win the game. Like, that would be the ideal situation for tonight. But Eovaldi has been really good like really, really good. He's better at home than he is on the road, but I kind of, toss that to the side when you're playing in a park like Seattle at T-Mobile Park, which is one of the biggest parks in all of baseball. For as great as the Seattle Mariners have been, they get timely hits. They don't get consistent hits. That's their biggest issue. When they make the playoffs, that's going to be the biggest concern there. But when you look at their numbers across the board against righties, I mean, they're not impressive. I can be man enough to say that they're not impressive. 298 WOBA, 157 isolated power, a 92 WRC plus. If you put those numbers in front of me and said, this team is actually in the playoff hunt, I would call you a liar because I say that's absolutely impossible. But that's exactly the team the Seattle Mariners are. They strike out a ton too as well. That's the 5th highest K rate in the league against righties. Evaldi's not like a blow you away type guy, but he strikes out more than a batter an inning. At only 9,600, there's a lot less risk with him than I would say the majority of the top price guys on this slate, like Garrett Cole, like Giolito, like Montos, all have red flags. I really am struggling to find what that red flag to Evaldi is. So if that's the case, and he's only the 5th most expensive guy on the slate, that's where I'm going.
I would say too,
please.
I mean, if we're just going to talk about the top 5, the one guy we haven't mentioned is Jose Barrios. Barrios is kind of in an interesting spot, the way the Jays rotation sets up, because we saw last night, and it's happened 2 times this season, Alek Manoah, who is a very similar pitcher in both arsenal and style to Jose Barrios, about a 92 to 95 mile an hour, 2-seam fastball, big curveball, big slider, heavy movement. Manoah goes 8 innings, strikes out 10. It's the second time he's done that against the Rays so far this season. We know the one knock with the Tampa Bay Rays, who, I should say, lead baseball in runs scored. It is not easy to use a starting pitcher against the Rays. There's inherent risk here. However, they strike out so much, like a ton. They are among the league leaders in strikeout rate virtually within every split. If you think that someone of a similar archetype can go out and have a similar kind of start, I think there is some value in Barrios because people aren't probably going to be flying to use this guy. He'll be fine, his ownership, but he won't be the most popular guy by any stretch of the imagination. The upside is very high. The downside here is obviously very low. Maybe the Rays, having just seen that type of pitcher, will now tee off on a guy the second night in a row. So I do think there's clearly risk here. However, as probably the guy who's going to be least popular, aside from Lucas Giolito, among that top 5, I do think there is some intrigue for Jose Barrios.
So you guys, I mean, you both hit on it, the red flags, the, potential downfalls or however we want to label it among some of those upper echelon pitchers. And Evaldi, and I'm not saying he's going to have the best night, but being among that group, obviously one of the more consistent pitchers in Major League Baseball this year. And maybe the best way to frame it is safer floor among that group.
Yeah.
He arguably has the, or maybe even definitively has the safest floor of those guys. Based on what's available to you tonight, again, big slate, are you more drawn to one or two safe floor guys and just kind of hope for the high ceiling, or maybe use those on your bats? Or do you want to take those flyers with some of those expensive pitchers?
The problem with tonight's pitching slate is that there's not a lot of high ceiling guys
or high floor
or high floor. Like it's kind of like
September baseball.
Yeah, it's kind of like, we're looking at the 3rd and 4th guys in the rotation for the majority of this slate. Like, it's just what it's unfortunately all happened on a Tuesday on this massive slate, but there's just a lot of risk on this slate when it comes to pitching. So I would say, I would try to go with some of those safer floor guys. I think Evaldi's one of those guys. Barrios is borderline safe for something. And that's probably a stretch, but there's really not a lot of high ceiling guys. There's not a lot of high floor guys. So you're just going to have to, kind of pinch your nose and hope for the best. But yeah, when you're going through this list, it ain't that attractive.
No, you've got, again, the issues that pop up with every single one of these guys, especially the value guys. I mean, Drew Rasmussen has looked really good as a starting pitcher, but he's facing a team that just put together. I think Buster Olney said it was the first time in Major League history a team has hit 36 home runs and hit 330 across a 3-week span. So do you really want to use a guy against that lineup? It's tough. Then you've got Tuki Toussaint, who we just talked about. there are concerns about how deep he can work into this game, despite how good that matchup is. I mean, this slate is so bad on value pitching options that Jesus Luzardo is legitimately looking good to me. And I hate that feeling.
Stop it.
Exactly. It's bad. However, his last 3 starts have been pretty good. He's tied his season high for strikeouts in 2 of his last 3 starts. Washington, it's weird. Washington's actually hit better since the All-Star break than they were hitting before the All-Star break. I don't really understand.
Same with the Cubs.
It's true. Same
The
with
Cubs as well.
So,
yeah.
All these teams that apparently waved the white flag, I guess didn't really wave the white flag. But yeah, again, if Jesus Luzardo is starting to look good to me, it's like a man who needs a drink of water in the desert. I'm just starting to see hallucinations, and it's scary. It is scary out there once you get below even like 9,500 on this slate, because if Luke Weaver is going to be above 9K, it says a lot about a slate.
Let's keep talking pitching a little bit, although it's not necessarily specific to tonight. We have a question from Delome10 on Twitch. It says, what do y'all think of the Astros starting pitching going into the playoffs? Of course, one of the division leaders out there in the American League right now. What do you say, Bukes?
The problem with them is that they have injury concerns that they're dealing with. Odorizzi, I think, just went on the IL today with that foot injury. They're getting Zach Greinke back, which, I don't know if that's something you want to be excited about or not, but that's going to be their biggest downfall heading into the playoffs. That is going to be their biggest concern. And that's not something that has been normal for them. That's usually been their biggest strength when you think of the Verlander days and whatnot. So I think that's gonna be a legitimate concern. Like, I know they have some of the guys they brought up, like Valdez has been good. Jose Urquidy has been okay at times, but I think especially when you think about some of the other teams that will be making the playoffs, like a White Sox, like a Rays, the Astros rotation doesn't even come close to some of these teams and the strength that they have. So that's going to be their biggest thing. They're going to need a lot of help from that bullpen, I think, during the playoffs.
Gary?
I mean, I guess at the end of the day, if you're really looking at a 7-game series and your game 1 is McCullers, your game 2 is, let's say Framber, and then you piece together 3, 4. Greinke's probably involved in some capacity there, although we've seen how that's played out at times the last couple playoffs. I wouldn't say it's so bad it's to their detriment, but as Steve was saying, it's obviously not an advantage. Like, they've had such a clear advantage several times over the past couple of seasons. So I think they fall into the bucket of a team that is just going to be relying heavily on scoring a lot of runs in the playoffs to get where they want to go. Because unlike the Rays, who have very apparent starting rotation issues heading into the playoffs, they can piece together magic with that bullpen, where the Astros bullpen is also kind of a major question mark and has been for them most of this season. So the pitching is definitely the weaker link of the Houston Astros.
We've got 10 more minutes or so. Let's, by all means, if anyone has any DFS questions or if there's anything else that you guys want to sprinkle in daily wise, don't hesitate. But let's go back to the DK Sportsbook as well, because I mentioned it earlier. You both have articles up on DK Nation, DK Playbook, Garion on the best studs and value picks in the world of daily fantasy. And of course, the cheat sheet from Bukes. Talked about Garrett Cole a little bit. You highlighted he is most expensive on the slate, biggest sportsbook favorite as well. You talked about the Yankees earlier and their odds tonight and how we should view that. But highest projected total, this is something you made note of as well. And that is Cubs at the struggling Phillies, 9.5 run total. Neither club hits the over very often, part of your breakdown. But when they go head to head, happens without fail.
Yeah, these teams met up in Chicago a couple months ago. The over was 4-0 in that series. This is an interesting one, though, because Adrian Sampson has been abysmal. He's only pitched like 16 1/3 innings in the majors this season. He's been abysmal when he's been pitching, though. His ERA is a 2.20. Looks great. Look at his FIP. It's like 5.38. It's almost like 3 runs higher than his ERA. That's, my friends, is a red flag and a half when you see something like that. 4 home runs allowed through 16 1/3 innings. The problem is the Cubs bullpen has been phenomenal through the month of September. Like, their FIP is like the second lowest in the league over that span. So I feel like they'll light up Sampson. That shouldn't be a problem. But then they got to deal with the Cubs bullpen, and suddenly that's a bad thing for opposing teams. So the over is at 9.5. It's at even money now. It wasn't this morning. So people are starting to get on that under train. It's a tough one. It's a really tough one because if you look at this just generically, Cubs at Phillies, Adrian Sampson, Kyle Gibson, easy over, right? Then you start going into the stats and you're like, I don't know, maybe not. And the numbers have shifted that way, under 9.5. I think it's going to be close. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if this is a 4-3 game, 6-2 game, something like that. But I don't know if this reaches 10 runs tonight.
Garion, what do you think of that one?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely a total that I probably felt better about this morning. And sort of as I've sat on it a little bit more, I'd probably just be inclined to stay away. I don't trust either of these starting pitchers. I mean, Steve talked about Adrian Sampson and how bad it's been. He was also someone who, we hear a lot about guys who like went to the KBO, found something, and then came back. He was bad in the KBO. Like, when I saw him pitching this season, I was like, wait, no, he was bad. Like, how did this happen? Like,
right.
Why is Dan Straley not here? Dan Straley's great in the KBO. But also when you start looking at, just some of the minor lineup things here. And when we're needing 10 runs, this stuff matters. No JT Realmuto tonight for the Phillies. That is obviously one of their best bats. And in a lineup that's already missing Rhys Hoskins, you've now taken arguably two of their best three batters out of that lineup. I know it's Adrian Sampson. I know I already said Kyle Gibson's been struggling a lot since he was traded to Philly, but it's a lot of runs. It's a lot of runs. So I'm not super confident. I would probably just stay away.
All right. So if you don't love that one, what's a bet that does stand out to you tonight on the DK Sportsbook?
I mean, I think there's a lot of different ways you can go. I do like Oakland money line if that game ends up being played. Oakland run line as well. I just think the pitching matchup is very lopsided. I would also say I like some of the total bases props around the league. If you want to take Jose Abreu over 1.5 total bases, I like that. If you want to take Matt Olson over 1.5 total bases, I also like that bet. So that's the great thing. If you really have a lean in terms of DFS and you like a guy is like your sort of linchpin play on the entire slate, someone you're going to have 75 to 100% exposure towards, why not just go bet their total bases prop on the DraftKings Sportsbook? Because more often than not, it's going to be at plus money.
Yeah,
go ahead.
I was just going to say real quick, Houston Astros team total going against Jordan Lyles, somebody they've absolutely lit up on two separate occasions, is at 5.5, even money on that one. I think that's an easy over.
Again, any questions you guys have, get them in. Sort of bouncing around at this point between DFS and the DK Sportsbook. Happy to do it with you for next little bit before we get out of here. This is a question from, let's see, Jerry, just shy of 1 billion on Twitch. Best batter to pay up for tonight. Who do you think, Bukes?
I think overall, I do like Aaron Judge a lot going up against Alexander Wells. Judge is probably one of the better left-handed, hitters against lefties in the league, especially when he's on the road. You look at his numbers in that situation: 453 WOBA, 273 isolated power, and a 192 WRC plus. The Yankees should absolutely smash Alexander Wells tonight, and then they have the benefit of going into that bullpen that has just been atrocious, really, since April 1st. They've never really recovered from April 1st, it seems like. So the Yankees team total as of earlier, I think it was set at 6.5 runs. So the Yankees are not going to be a sneaky play by any means. Yeah, 6.5 runs at the even money at the over. I never take totals when it's like 6 or above if it's not at Coors Field. I didn't hesitate today with 6.5 runs with the Yankees going against the Orioles, a team who, by the way, as I mentioned earlier, let up 44 runs to the Blue Jays just a few days ago. So if you're worried about that type of total, I'm telling you right now, you probably don't need to. But Aaron Judge is one of my favorites on the slate.
12 gamer on the main slate. A lot of good bats. So Tani, Guerrero, spent a lot of time on both them earlier. Harper, Tatis, list goes on, obviously. Freeman, Soto, and then from there. But what do you think, Gary? And who do you like?
Yeah, I would say my two favorite expensive plays. Again, one comes with the caveat. You got to watch the weather in Kansas City. But Matt Olson, really nice spot tonight. Jackson Kowar has struggled immensely with left-handed batters in the brief appearances he has made at the major league level so far. They are slashing basically like Vladimir Guerrero Jr. numbers across the board against this guy. 33 have faced him in 2021, 560 slugging percentage among those 33 plate appearances. So in a really nice spot, just $5,100. Also $5,100 this time in the outfield. I know Steve said he liked the over for the Astros. I would be inclined to agree with him. And I think Yordan Alvarez is in a really, really nice spot. This guy's been on fire since the start of August. He's got a 331 ISO and a 165 WRC plus in that span of time. In Jordan Lyles' last 7 starts, lefties have a 612 slugging percentage and have hit 3.2 home runs per 9 against Jordan Lyles. Trust me when I say it's not hard to come up with bad Jordan Lyles stats. They kind of just are out in the ether. You just pluck them out. It's very easy, but some pretty horrendous numbers specifically against lefties for Lyles. I think Alvarez has a huge night.
You guys both know we do this on the sweat from time to time. A bold prediction for tonight's slate. What do you think, Bukes? And I will also volunteer to anyone out there watching, listening, that I'm putting them in the spot with this. So if they happen to nail it, it's right off the top of their heads. Bukes, what do you like tonight?
Bold prediction for tonight. Yeah, totally caught me off guard, but I will go ahead and say that the Arizona Diamondbacks will pull off a win against the Dodgers tonight.
Okay, Garion.
I like that. Let's see. Bold prediction. I'm going to say the Chicago White Sox score at least 12 runs tonight.
That's wild, but I like it.
12 plus.
Wow.
Yeah.
Am I allowed to say the Red Sox don't allow an unearned run? Is that a bold prediction at this point?
Is Kyle Schwarber starting at first? I didn't check.
I think he is, but,
Well, not that bold then.
Yeah. In our last couple minutes too, because we've covered a lot of baseball, and the guy who was a sports fan, someone that I certainly recall Gary and I talking quite a bit about during our some Friday nights, a summer ago on the Dream Stream, and Bukes may have been a fan as well, but Gary and I have been tweeting, rest in peace to Norm Macdonald. Obviously, some really surprising news coming across today that the comedian losing a long fight with cancer for about a decade, very privately. I don't think anyone in the public eye anyway had any clue that he was even sick, let alone sick for that period of time. Obviously an incredibly influential guy. I just wanted to make mention of him. I was a big fan. You guys probably were as well. Unique, very unique comedian, but touched a lot of people along the way.
No, fully agree.
Underrated movie from Norm Macdonald is Screwed with Dave Chappelle and David DeVito.
I haven't even seen that one.
I know. I may have to put on Dirty Work tonight just to.
Dirty Work is where my mind was going. Also, I mean, if they have 5 to 8 minutes and need a laugh, just go type in Norm Macdonald Conan, and any single one of his the last 25 years are absolute gold. So. Yeah.
Or of course the ESPYs monologue from many years back when he was not invited to return. The slate. Yeah, why. Right. It's weird. The slate comes your way, folks, Monday through Friday. There is, sometimes golf focus, often football, and just like today, baseball, especially with a few weeks remaining in the regular season. There's plenty of time to talk about what's going on the diamond, a lot of intriguing things, and then playoffs. So, that obviously in Major League Baseball takes a solid month plus. So we'll be doing this for a little while before we're, on to mostly football and basketball returning and all of that. But you've heard all the insights. Make sure that heed the wisdom from these men, and be sure to thank them on social media if you take their advice and they're right, and if they're wrong, it was Glash gave you all that advice. So make sure, and Kenny, go tweet at them.
Kenny,
wish Kenny Ducey a happy birthday, folks. Then
is it his birthday today?
It's his birthday. Yeah. Make sure you tweet him.
17th.
His birthday is the 14th
today.
Oh, it's my son's birthday too. That's awful.
That's a tough omen for you.
Oh, that's awful. Yeah,
that hits close to home in the Buchanan household.
Oh, that's awful. My poor kid. Okay. Thanks for letting me know.
Thanks to Eamon, our producer. We appreciate you. Undercover boss Tom as well, our technical director, keeping this thing moving. Garion Thorne, Steve Buchanan. I'm Adam Kaufman. Best of luck, everyone. MLB or otherwise tonight. We'll catch you next time. The slate returns after the 4:00 sim, just after 5:00 Eastern tomorrow. But even before that, the sweat in the morning, 11 a.m. Eastern. Make sure you tune in. We'll see you.